Hi, I'm Reed Larsen with Old Glory Mint, and we're here on location at the Utah Monetary Summit. And I have David Morgan with me here, and David has agreed to let me ask him a few questions about what's been going on in the market the last several days, as we've seen a lot of changes, haven't we?
Indeed we have, Reed. We've seen massive sell-off in both gold and silver, and it's been what I call waterfall decline. This is where you see these massive moves down. It usually takes at least 3 days for these things to subside. As we're doing this interview, silver traded as low as I think it touched near 26. It's now trading above 30. So it's been like a $6 move from top to bottom already in a day's time. Basically, you wouldn't see these type of moves in the metals without the fact that they're so highly leveraged. There's so many derivatives in the metals. In fact, Jeff Christian, who runs CPM Group of New York, is on record stating about 100 to 1 leverage in the precious metals. Whether or not that's true or not, the point is simple. When you have so much derivatives exposure in any market, the swings can be very, very huge, as we've witnessed on the downside for precious metals. I'm still very bullish longer term, but I don't think this is going to subside in a short time span. I think these kind of moves usually take time to regroup, rebuild, build a base, and come back up. So personally, at this point in time, I reserve the right to change my opinion. Think that it's probably going to be about a 3-month time frame before we get a lot of stability in the markets and we're back up into, say, the $40 level or so with silver that we were at just 4 days ago, and back up to the $1,800-$1,900 level in gold again that we were at maybe 4 days ago. So right now, the way I see it is it's going to take time to rebuild the base. Fundamentally, the metals are stronger and a better buy than they've ever been. Anyone that's scared out by this move to the downside should really rethink their premise, because nothing is better in today's economic environment than owning precious metals.
Why do you think it's important that people own precious metals?
It's the only asset class that can't default. There's no counterparty risk. Everything else that you own, you either have to go through a bank or a broker to get, final payment, whereas gold and silver in your hand is final payment. So there's no trust issues, there's no third-party issues, there's nothing other than being in a monetary asset that's world recognized and has been for 1,000 years. Ask somebody about, like the last time we did an interview together, the Zimbabwe dollar. How much confidence do they have in that all the way down? So the U.S. dollar, unfortunately, is in a similar situation, not as dramatic as far as in a time frame sense, but in an overall currency crisis sense, it's probably as bad as, or maybe even worse than the Zimbabwe dollar. And what I mean by that is that over time, it's going to continue to lose purchasing power.
One of the things that I've noticed is, in taking a look at the purchasing power of the dollar and the dollar index, the movements of the dollar index have not really reflected in the precious metals. We saw on Friday and again today that the dollar, although it's gaining some strength against other currencies, is not gaining the kind of strength that would be indicative of the market declines that we're seeing actually in the gold and the silver. Do you have any thoughts on why maybe there's kind of a little bit of a detach going on between what's happening, the strength, the weakness of the dollar versus other currencies, as opposed to what we're seeing in the gold and silver markets?
I do. First of all, there is a contingency out there that looks at gold being opposite the dollar. And you can, in fact, Ian McAvity, who I greatly respect, can take a dollar chart and flip it upside down. It looks like the gold chart, and then superimpose the gold chart. So I'm not saying that they aren't inversely related. To some degree they are. But as things go further down the road, like we are now, what you really want to look at is, what is the physical economy doing? What is wealth creation? Because economics is about wealth creation or wealth destruction. And that's what you have to focus on. So what you really want to look at is, since gold itself is real wealth, you want to see what that matches up against. How many new wheat fields are being created in the United States? How many new factories are being created? How many new ideas are being promoted that are going to build wealth in the country or in the world? So you want to match the increase in the money supply, the 1% to 2% of gold that comes to out of the ground and increases the amount of gold on an annual basis, versus the real economy of physical goods and services that are being produced that are wanted by the marketplace. And that's where you get the breakaway between the currency and gold that we're seeing now. The later stages of these great economic conundrums come to a point where basically people start to wake up more and more and more, and actually catches fire at some point where people understand that whatever the government is saying isn't working, whatever they're trying to do to put out the fire isn't working, that you have to have something of substance. And that's where we're at today. And I think, unfortunately, that the political environment outside of states like Utah that are stepping up to the plate and issuing their own currency, or not issuing their own currency, stepping up to the plate and saying, look, there's a solution here. It's pretty simple. Here's what you have an alternative to do. But I think that's going to be at the state level, not at the federal level.
Have you seen any changes in the fundamentals of the market over the last couple of days that might have precipitated this?
No change in fundamentals. As I said earlier, it's only gotten stronger. So basically, there isn't a big, hoard of gold that hit the market or some, meteorite of 999 fine silver that landed in the Indian Ocean. I mean, none of this stuff has taken place. No, the fundamentals are as strong as ever, but the market is spooked, and there is a big sell-off. And since gold is so highly leveraged, a lot of money managers have not a philosophical attachment to gold and silver that I have. It's an asset class for them. And when they get a margin call, they look at their book and they say, what do I have that I can sell? And gold is something that they have on their books, probably in paper form, and they're going to sell it. And that selling begets selling begets selling. Markets always move down faster than they move up. Something to bear in mind. I learned that one the hard way myself in an over-leveraged position when I was in my 20s. I've never forgotten that fact.
Yeah, and we've seen the market move very strongly to the downside over the last couple of days. What do you think the outlook is for the next several days? Will that continue to play out to the downside, or do you think we're approaching a point where we're going to start consolidating here?
Well, I'll give it my best guess. I really think, from my experience, it's usually a 3-day washout when they're this hard. We already saw silver reverse today. I think we're probably going to find a bottom soon. Now, whether that bottom holds or not, that's a bigger question for me. And that's, of course, presuming that I'm correct in what I just said. I definitely would say buying silver under 30 or near 30 for the long term, you're probably safe. And I would also caution anybody that's watching this video to not get excited that anyone can pick an exact bottom. I would take at least a 3-month approach, preferably a 6-month approach, to get back into the market. Even if the market stabilizes here and starts going back up from here, which it may, I still think you're better off averaging into the market rather than trying to pick an exact bottom. Once somebody has spent their resources on an asset class, especially something as volatile as silver, it's only to watch it go against them for a week, a month, or 2 months, 6 months even. They could get disheartened, and you shouldn't, because the metals aren't what changes. An ounce of silver is an ounce of silver, whether you own it today, a year ago, 2 years ago, or 10 years hence. It's still an ounce of silver. What you have to concentrate on is what's the value of the purchasing power of that product at a given point in time.
So, in addition to dollar cost averaging your way in over the next 3 to 6 months, what advice would you have for people who are relatively new, who are maybe poking around and saying, I have a good feeling about gold and silver. I think now may be a good entry point for the market. Tell me, what would you say to somebody who's relatively new?
I'd say get educated. I'd say read something, read more than one thing, but you could start with Murray Rothbard's What Has the Government Done to Our Money? Get educated. Don't do it based on what I say or my success or anyone's. Learn yourself. I mean, this is, I think, one of the big problems in our country is that people are undereducated. There's the information age, but I call it the information overload age. You really want to understand sound principles of finance. You want to understand sound principles throughout the spectrum, farming, education, and these type of things. So educate yourself and convince yourself that there's something important about honest money, sound money, and these principles that have made this country so great for such a long time. And look at what's happened from the time we went off the international gold standard, August 15, 1971 till now. If you take a look at what the U.S. dollar's done during the dollar index versus other currencies from that point till now, or especially against a constant like gold, then you'll see for yourself what we're talking about. But get educated. Don't just do something on a whim or it's popular, it sounds good. I think that's the wrong reasons. The best reason is to understand the principles behind sound money. Once you understand those, you'll be much more in tune with why you own them.
What do you see happening here in Utah? I know that you were here earlier when the governor signed the Utah Sound Money Act, and I know that you've kind of been watching the events as they've unfolded here in Utah. What's your opinion, and what are your thoughts on what's on this movement that you see developing here in Utah?
Well, I'm delighted by it because people forget and they don't know history very well. Not that I'm a historian, I'm not, but the highest form of the highest powered individual in the United States is that of citizen. Citizen had the highest clout. Of course, it's not that way anymore, but that was the design. It was we the people, and we the people had all of our God-given sovereign rights protected and secured by the Constitution. And we gave up 100% of those rights, just a little bit of them, to the federal government. And we gave up, and most of it resided with the people, then to the states, and then to the federal government. And everything's been turned upside down. So Utah is one of the few states, and there's about 10 or 11 that understand that principle, that have had the ability to reenact what really is a sovereign right of the state to enact and understand that gold and silver are money and can be used voluntarily in transactions. So I commend Utah. You know, I made a similar speech when I was here last time. I think it's now in your hands, meaning that it's the citizens, it's the people that are watching these videos to actually implement it. It's great in theory, it does work in practice. Let's get it into practice, and that's what this Utah Monetary Summit's all about today.
And if you would have a piece of advice for people once they do purchase and own some physical gold and silver, and not the paper gold and silver or other types of holdings that might relate to gold and silver like stocks, but physical gold and silver, once you have it, what should you do with it?
Well, I think at this point in time you should probably save it, but I think the bigger question may be, you know, to help educate others why you did it. You can tell your family why you're doing it. And having savings is always a good thing. I mean, the Mormons, as an example, are pretty good at saving food. Why? Because we don't know the future. And it's something that we all need. We really need money. Money is the highest form that allows us all to do our best and have separation of labor. That's why we can have an extremely wealthy civilization, is because we have money, and because that allows all of us to have one thing that we all exchange and be able to pursue our best interests and our best goals individually, rather than us all having to farm for a living, for example. So I'm really think that it's an important thing to understand why savings are important to the growth of an economy. I would say that would be as succinctly as I could say it.
At what point should a person consider selling or liquidating their silver or their gold holdings, in your opinion?
Always an individual choice. I get that question a lot, but you know, it depends on you. I mean, for me personally, I've got 2 girls to put through college, and it looks like both of them want medical careers, so I may be liquidating some of my silver or gold holdings because of that, rather than on my own personal individual wants or needs. But that'd be one example, but it's an individual case. I mean, people ask me that question a lot, and it's up to you. I would say they should think ahead in today's environment. So let's just look at that a bit longer. If there is a goal that you have for education or a home or a retirement plan or a boat or whatever it is on an individual basis, kind of think about that ahead of time, because sometimes these metals do get overvalued, even in paper terms, and there's something that you have postponed, which is what savings is all about. Whether you're savings in fiat or saving in gold, you should take advantage of, you know, why you're doing this. You know, now if you are very wealthy and you want to put up a foundation to teach economic principles and that's your goal, so be it. But all I'm saying is that, you know, savings for savings sake alone isn't the best attitude. You do want to have some implementation down the road, whether you're wealthy enough to be able to extend it into a different generation or build a foundation or some kind of a, you know, something like that. That's fine. I don't have any problem with that. It's just that just to hold on to it, no. I think money does have to circulate, but again, to have savings at some point or throughout your lifetime or whatever, of course, is important. And a lot of people have lost sight of that. It's buy now and find the money later type of mentality, which we really has caused part of the problem.
And one last question for you, David. What do you see coming up in 2012? What's on the horizon for precious metals?
Wow, great question. I think by 2012, we'll probably see a lot more implementation of something similar to what Utah has done. I think you'll see more states that will try or will pass sound money acts or principles. I think you'll see it used more and more in transactions, either transparently or opaquely. And I really think, I'm pretty optimistic actually, that things have gone far enough where there's enough momentum that we'll see more and more people coming into the precious metals as a form of exchange.
Thank you for your time today, David, and enjoy the rest of the conference.
My pleasure. Thank you, Reed.